and welcome into the Patrick Party pregame show here on this Saturday. Of course, the Augusta National is where everyone in the sports world will be watching as the 84th edition of the Masters takes place. They're currently finishing up round 2, and we're going to talk a lot about the Masters today on our split show here on the Patrick Party pregame show. Let's go ahead and welcome you in to the program. We're going to go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do a little bit different than our other days. We are going to, the first half of the show, talk only about college football. Lots of news going on in that world. There's been lots of COVID problems. We're going to talk all about all of the games and what has happened over this past week and the landscape of college football. And then the second half of the show, we're going to focus on the 84th edition of the Masters, Saturday at the Masters. We're going to recap round 2 and the little bit that will still probably be going on. And then we'll get you all ready for round 3, which will start literally right after round 2 ends. We'll talk about the cut, who is going to make it, some big names not making the cut, some big names are. So it's going to be a great Saturday in Augusta National. Of course, College Game Day's there. It'll be on ESPN to finish out round 2, and then we'll go to CBS for the remainder of the tournament. Well, let's go ahead and just get right on into it here. We normally like to start the show as we kind of recap what's been going on in the sports world recently. Let's see. In the NBA, they decided on December 22nd as their date to start the 2020-2021 NBA basketball season. The draft is coming up in, I believe, about 2 weeks. So we'll look out and see how Isaac Okoro does. Nothing much going on in the MLB. The NFL has just been kind of riding along. I mean, as everybody else has started to really, we've all still been dealing with COVID, but, it's gotten a little bit worse recently. Specifically in college football, it started to get bad. The NFL starting to actually be okay. They've kind of gotten into a good groove of things. People know what they can and kind of can't do, and there's not a lot of craziness with all of that, I guess. But you never know. COVID craziness can always get a little bit more crazier. And then, college football, there's been a whole bunch of cancellations depending on what conference you're in, Big Ten or Pac-12. And then in the SEC and ACC and Big 12, there's been a lot of postponements. So there's just been lots going around in the college football landscape. And we're going to go ahead and start our show today. We always start with Saturday slate. No, today we're starting with COVID craziness because the Saturday slate is so bad today that we have to tell you what's not happening first so you understand. So let's go ahead and start it off with the COVID craziness. We're going to go conference by conference. Let's go ahead and start it off with the SEC, who had a really bad week. A whole bunch of cancellations happened this week. Not cancellations, postponements. And we'll talk about the scheduling impacts of that coming up in just 1 second. So let's go ahead and get it started with Alabama and LSU. That was going to be, when they made in the preseason, when they made the schedule, whoever decided LSU was that top 5 preseason team, that was the big time matchup. Well, regardless, if that had been played, that wasn't going to be that good of a game anyways. It's not going to get played. COVID issues, I believe, on LSU's side. Texas A&M and Tennessee, postponed. Georgia, Missouri, postponed. Auburn, Mississippi State, postponed. I believe Auburn and Mississippi State, they do both have COVID issues. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 of the, in a regular week, potential 7. 14 teams, there can be 7 games a week. 4 of those 7 not happening today. Most likely trying to happen later in the week. We'll get to the scheduling impact of that in a little bit. Let's see. In the Big Ten, it really looks like we only have Ohio State and Maryland. That was actually, I don't think there was any thought that maybe Ohio State would lose per se, but I thought that was definitely an interesting game. Tua's brother, I believe Tagovailoa, had really starting to get on a roll with the Terps. They had beaten some decent teams, or what we thought were decent teams. I don't think Penn State's that good. We've determined that. They're 0-3. We'll talk about them later in the show. Let's see. The Pac-12's also had some issues. They canceled some games. They're canceled. The Big Ten and the Pac-12 is just canceled. Those games will not happen. There's just simply not enough time. So in the Pac-12, we have Cal at Arizona State canceled, and Utah and UCLA, I think this is Utah's second game, being canceled. They are looking at, and I don't think this will happen just because I'd be shocked. But they were looking at, they said the conference was trying to see if UCLA could potentially play somebody in the Rose Bowl on Sunday. I believe it was Cal. It was Cal because Arizona State, I believe, is the one that's having COVID problems. So we'll see. I just think one day's notice is probably not enough to play a football game. In the ACC, you have Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech. That one is postponed. And then there's a whole bunch of group of 5 games as well. Let's see. Coastal Carolina, who is ranked at number 15 at Troy, has been postponed as well. But we do have a lot of games going on. But let's talk about the schedule impact, specifically the SEC. So Texas A&M, Tennessee, they're going to go to the 12th. They haven't had a neither of those teams have had a game that they've had to deal with, COVID yet, so they're fine. Georgia, Missouri, that's interesting. Auburn, Mississippi State, they haven't had a game they've had to deal with COVID. Here's where this gets interesting. Alabama, LSU, and Georgia, Missouri. Well, I believe Missouri has a game with Vanderbilt that's supposed to be on December 12th, and LSU has a game with Florida. Well, one of the talks is specifically that Missouri and Vanderbilt game is that I believe it's been clinched that neither of those teams can, in any way possible, crazy mathematical reasons, make it to Atlanta. So they're thinking about potentially, if both teams have no chance at making it to the SEC Championship game, they would start to put those games on SEC Championship Saturday, December 19th. So we're looking at having games Thanksgiving weekend, the week after, that's when Auburn plays A&M. That's, the week after. That's supposed to be the last regular season weekend. The 12th, which was the makeup weekend, and then the 19th as well for teams that will not be in Atlanta. Of course, if you're still in a race, or even if it's like LSU, Florida, that will have to be played before because Florida most likely will be in that SEC championship game. Alabama and LSU, Alabama's going to need to be in that SEC championship. Well, they're probably going to be in the SEC championship game. So that's going to be interesting to see how that one turns out because both those teams are going to need to play that one opponent. And I don't know. We'll see. A lot of people think that the SEC will do what it can. Even if you had to cancel some Vanderbilt game or something, they want to do what they can to at least have a legitimate champion. So the champions have, the champion of the SEC hasn't had all these missed games and things. So that's going to do it for COVID craziness, the craziest COVID craziness segment we've had of the year so far. And hopefully hopefully one day we get to get rid of the segment, but you can't not talk about it when there's that much going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into how we normally like to start the show with our Saturday slate. Let's go ahead and get it started with Virginia Tech and Miami. Miami all the way up to number 9, and we're going to talk about this on the spread, but Virginia Tech is favored. That is right. Virginia Tech is favored at home against a top 10 Miami Hurricanes squad at noon. And may I remind you, Virginia Tech lost to Liberty at home last week, but they are still favored against Miami. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how Rhett Lashley, De'Aaron King, how that offense can get going. Of course, Virginia Tech's defense, not as great as in years past. Bud Foster, not their defensive coordinator anymore. His last game was last year when they lost in the Belk Bowl, now the Mayonnaise Bowl, to Kentucky in Charlotte. So that'll be that's what College Game Day will lead into, is Virginia Tech Miami on ESPN, 12 Eastern, 11 Central. Then on the ABC game for the noon time slot, we have the number 10 Indiana Hoosiers going to Spartan Stadium to take on the struggling Michigan State Spartans. Michigan State's only win was at Michigan, and everyone thought, well, maybe Rutgers could just be decent, and they just could have lost. No, Michigan State has lost every other game, and really that none of them have been that close. It's just Michigan played that bad. So we're gonna see if Indiana can keep it going. Tom Allen definitely had a big season so far, and we'll see how Indiana can keep it going. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch. Of course, they don't have very many games, so if they could just put together a little bit of a hot streak, they're definitely going to have a big year for the Hoosiers. Our first SEC game of the day, leading SEC Nation will lead into this one. You have Vanderbilt, Kentucky on the SEC Network from Kroger Field and Lexington, Kentucky in the noon early time slot. Vanderbilt, maybe they'll get a win this season. I don't think they will. I mean, they really stink. And then Kentucky, most teams, even the bad teams, have been beating Kentucky by lots and lots. Even the bad teams have been beating Vanderbilt by lots and lots of points. So I wouldn't expect this one to be any different. But it's an SEC game, and we only get 3 of them today, so you got to highlight it. Next up, we have Boston College and Notre Dame. Notre Dame all the way up to number 2 in the country after getting that big win at home in South Bend last week to Clemson, the number 1 team in the country. Well, Notre Dame, this is an interesting fact. In 93, Notre Dame, the last time Notre Dame beat a number 1 team in the country, they beat Florida State at home. Well, the week after that, they hosted Boston College and lost. Well, this past weekend, they beat the number 1 team in the country at home. This time, they're going to go to Alumni Stadium to take on the Eagles. Can Notre Dame get a win, or could Boston College, for the second time, pull up a major upset against the Fighting Irish? I don't know. I don't think this Boston College team is that good, but we'll see what will happen. Next up, a big SEC game tonight on ESPN, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, Steve Spurrier, Florida Field. On ESPN, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. The number 6 Gators, who beat the Dogs in Jacksonville last week, and looks like they're going to wrap it up in the SEC East and have a trip to Atlanta and a spot. Really, it's going to probably end up being a quarterfinal for the college football playoff. They'll take on the Arkansas Razorbacks without their head coach. Sam Pittman will not be. He tested positive. He will not be at the game. And, he can't make contact with the sideline, so we'll see how Arkansas can do. I still think that Barry Odom defense could give Kyle Trask some trouble. But in this game where Felipe Franks returns to the Swamp, I think it's just going to be really tough for the Razorbacks without their head coach to get a big win. And then big one on Fox tonight, out in the Pac-12, out in Washington State, Pullman, Washington, you have the Washington State Cougars taking on the number 11 Oregon Ducks on Fox. Oregon got off to the win last week against Stanford. We'll see if they can keep it going on the road. Oregon, really think they're probably the 1 Pac-12 or maybe 2 Pac-12 teams that think they can go undefeated. Could they get a spot in the playoff? We'll see. We're going to have a Patrick Party Pat to the playoff segment in a little bit, but we'll see how Oregon, if they can just keep it going. Everybody thinks if a Pac-12 team even wants to think about making it to the playoff, they will definitely have to go undefeated for sure. And then our last game of the Saturday slate, ABC Saturday Night Football from Michigan Stadium. The Michigan Wolverines, the struggling Michigan Wolverines, might I say, will take on the number 13 Wisconsin Badgers tonight in prime time from the Big House. Well, Michigan lost yet again. Indiana just made Michigan look bad. We'll see what happens. Everyone's chirping about Jim Harbaugh. They're getting mad. I think if they lost again, people are really going to start to be... everyone's already upset, but it could get ugly. So we'll see how that whole coaching thing... But like I've said, I don't think there's going to be a huge coaching carousel. Oh, who's going here and who's going there? We're going to pay this buyout. We're going to pay you a whole bunch of money. Because athletic departments have lost so much money with all of this COVID, without having fans, without probably getting as many of the donors and all this stuff. I just think... We'll see. I don't know how much his buyout is, to be completely honest, but we'll see how that all goes down. In Wisconsin, they have not played since that week 1, that Friday night at home against Illinois. They've missed 2 games already, so we'll see what the Badgers come out. I have no idea what to even think of the Badgers right now because they just haven't played in 3 weeks. So that's going to do it for our Saturday slate. There are some decent games on. That Michigan-Wisconsin should be a fun one after Masters coverage concludes on CBS for round 2, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and get into the spread here on the Patrick Party pregame show on this Saturday morning, Saturday at the Masters. Well, let's go ahead and talk. So we'd already kind of mentioned previously some of our things, but we'll go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so here on the spread, Wisconsin, a 5-point favorite on the road in the Big House over a 1-3 Michigan squad. Well, this is very interesting because, as we just said, we just talked about this game. Wisconsin, they haven't played in 2 weeks. They played that week 1 on a Friday night against Illinois. So, I just don't know what to think because, it's been a long time since they played. They probably only practiced a couple times this week. Michigan, although they haven't been playing great, they have been playing. So I don't expect this one to be some kind of blowout. I think Michigan could play pretty okay. We'll see if they're inspired. I don't know. Play for their coach. A lot of people have been trying to say they don't like their coach, but he did recruit him and he did sign them. So we'll see how Michigan can do. I am going to take Wisconsin in this one the 5.5. I think Wisconsin could get a big win in the Big House. Of course, we're going to make our picks here live in just a little bit. Then next up on the spread, we have Virginia Tech, a 2-point favorite over Miami. Now, this is a number 9 ranked Miami team. I think that's bizarre. You're in the top 10. You're playing a team who just lost to an FCS. They're not an FCS, but, a group of 5 team. They actually aren't even in a conference. And you're not favored. I mean, I just think that's so bizarre. So we'll see how that all turns out. Definitely, I don't even know. I just don't understand how Miami's not favored. I would take Miami in this one. I think De'Aaron King, I think Rhett Lashley, I think they'll get the job done. Next up, we have Northwestern and Purdue. This is an undefeated matchup. I should have put this in the Saturday slate. This is an undefeated matchup between the Wildcats and the Boilermakers. Northwestern, a 3-point favorite. And Northwestern, they don't have a very hard schedule at all going forward. Of course, there's a lot of Big Ten teams are down this year, really, other than Ohio State. So it should be an interesting one if the winner of this one could potentially maybe even make that Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin's had their COVID problems. But let's go ahead and read the rest of that schedule for you. The shortened schedule. So they blew out Miami 43-3. Then they barely beat Iowa 21-20. They came back on Halloween night. Then last week they beat Nebraska 21-13. They play Purdue. Then they play Wisconsin. That could be a tough one. Michigan State, Minnesota, who got blown out last night, and Illinois. Michigan State, Minnesota, Illinois. They should be able to win all of those. One would think they should only have one loss. They should have a pretty big year. So we'll see how that turns out. But I don't know. I just don't think. I think they definitely have a shot. Now, I don't think they'd compete with an Ohio State, but I think they'd be pretty decent. I would take Northwestern in this one. I think Northwestern will win. I think they could have a pretty good year. And then our last game of the spread, 2 winless teams in the Big Ten. That's right, winless. We have Penn State taking on Nebraska. Penn State, this has been a shock that they have just been awful. We'll see if James Franklin can turn it around today. They're 3.5-point favorites on the road in Memorial Stadium. We'll see what can happen. But, I'm going to have to go with Penn State. I think when it comes down to it, Penn State just has more talent. These are 2 not very good teams, not playing great at all right now, but I think Penn State has more talent, and with that, I think they're going to win. So that's going to do it for the spread. Let's go ahead now and get into Pat's, or just say the Patrick Party's, path to the playoffs. So, I've been looking around, and it's getting time for the playoff. I think those rankings come out in just a little bit. So, based on those top teams, we're going to kind of briefly just run through their schedule real fast and tell you what we think. So let's go ahead and start with Alabama. So Alabama, the Crimson Tide, they don't play today, but they will have to reschedule that game against LSU. I don't know when it's going to happen. I think it will happen. It's just a matter of time. So they play LSU, who stinks, Kentucky, who's not very good. Then their final 2 games of the season, Auburn at home, on the road to Arkansas. I wouldn't think they would struggle with Arkansas, but Arkansas surprised some people. In that Iron Bowl, they can lose the Iron Bowl and still go to Atlanta, probably still go to the playoff. I think Alabama's a pretty sure bet to get back to the playoff this season after missing it for the first time in the playoff era so far. Next up, we're going to look at Notre Dame, and I don't even think we really have to run through their schedule. I think it's fair. Will they play? Ooh, okay. My bad. Sorry, North Carolina, who has been a little inconsistent. And, I've criticized North Carolina a little bit this year. They've gotten a little bit more hype than they probably need. They play Boston College, then North Carolina. That's their probably last potential chance to lose. Then Syracuse. And then it's going to come down to, can they beat Clemson again on a neutral field? If they can do that, then they'll definitely be in the playoff. I don't know if they'll make the playoff if they lose to Clemson. We'll see. That's the tough thing about being in a conference this year, Notre Dame. You'd have to beat them twice. Okay, next up we have Ohio State, a potential playoff squad. Let's go ahead and look. So they play Indiana. Well, remember, they don't play this week. The whole Maryland shabam, not happening. It'll be a top 10 game. Indiana, Ohio State. That's a big one. How close do I think it'll be? Not really. But it could be a really big game. It's a top 10 matchup. Not one we expected, but hey, it should be interesting. I believe it'll be in the Horseshoe. Yes. And then they play Illinois, Michigan State, Michigan. I think Ohio State will run the table. I think they're a pretty sure bet. I don't see anyone in the Big 12 making it. Pac-12, like I said, you're going to have to run the table, and it's really just going to depend on some other people. So we'll see. The last one we're going to look at is the Florida Gators, who last week won the big game against Georgia. Looks like they're going to wrap up the East, but they have Arkansas at home, at Vanderbilt, and then Kentucky at home. I think Florida should be able to get it. Oh, and then Tennessee on the road. So they're going to finish Tennessee LSU if that LSU game doesn't get moved. We'll see how that goes down. Maybe Tennessee could shock them. I expect Florida to keep it going, and we'll see them in Atlanta. Well, that's going to do it for our path to the playoff here on the Patrick Party pregame show. Let's go ahead and get into one of our new favorite segments here on the pregame show, Bingham's Booms. So here is what we do, in case you have not seen Bingham's Booms yet. So we take the best game of each time slot. So the noon time slot, the kind of afternoon time slot, then the prime time, nighttime time slot, and we pick the best game. Then from within that game, we pick one side of the ball, either like one team's offense, one team's defense. Or hey, maybe in the special teams, and we give them a big old boom, and we say that they are going to help that team, have the edge, have a really great shot of winning. Of course, we won't make our picks for a couple minutes. So let's go ahead and start. The best game, in my opinion, if I only have one TV and you can only watch one game per time slot. Let's see. I think that best game. There's really not any good games. We'll say Virginia Tech, Miami. Well, I've said it. I think I've said it 3 times now. Rhett Lashley and De'Aaron King, they're going to get a big win today. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it. They're going to get a big win. They're going to win on the road. They're not favorites. I think that's bizarre. I think Miami, although 9 is too high for them. I'll say that. I think 9 is too high for them. I think they'll get a big win. I'm going to give a big old boom to former offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley and now quarterback transfer from Houston now to Miami, De'Aaron King. I think that offense is going to roll against a Virginia Tech defense that hasn't been that great since Bud Foster has left after last year. A big old boom for Miami's offense. Next up here on the Patrick Party pregame show as we go through the best game of each time slot. So the next one coming up, there's not a lot of good ones, but I'm going to have to go with, there really is no good games. USC and Arizona. I don't even know if I'd watch that. I'll just put it this way. This is what we're going to say. This afternoon time slot, I'm going to give a big old boom for the Masters because that is what I'm going to be watching. I'll talk about the Masters in a little bit. We're about to transition to that. But I'm going to give a big old boom for Augusta National Golf Course because that is what people are going to be watching this afternoon. And then tonight, the best game, I think, Michigan, Wisconsin. Michigan's really going to need to step it up. But I think Wisconsin, they're going to get a big old win. I'm going to give a big old boom to that Wisconsin defense. I think that is what's going to really help them get it over the top and really, when I say turn up the heat on that Jim Harbaugh talk, I mean turn up the heat. Well, it's time to go ahead and get into our picks here. We're going to make our picks for the games today, the bad games for today. And then we're going to talk about the Masters. So let's go ahead and get it started. Well, 1 second. Welcome into the Patrick Party pregame show. It's time to make our picks here on this Masters Saturday. We're about to transition to the Masters here on our pregame show, but we're going to make our college football picks first. Let's go ahead and get it started with the game in Lane Stadium. Virginia Tech against a top 10 Miami team, but get this, Virginia Tech lost to Liberty last week, and they're favored at home against a top 10 team. I don't know who makes those, but that was not a good pick. Miami, Rhett Lashley, De'Aaron King, gonna get a big win for sure. Then a top 10 Indiana team, they'll have a showdown with Ohio State next week, but they better not look ahead. Tom Allen needs to have the squad ready for this big one against Michigan State. The Spartans have struggled, and I think at home, I don't think they're going to get a win to kick off the day on ABC. I like Indiana big in this one. Then the first game of only the 3 games we have in the SEC today, you have Vanderbilt, Kentucky, 2 not very good teams in the SEC. Kentucky's kind of been a little bit of a disappointment this year. They're going to be at home. Everybody's beating Vanderbilt. Nobody's going to lose to Vanderbilt. I like Kentucky big in this one. Then you have Notre Dame, number 2 team in the country, after beating Clemson last week against Boston College on the road. Get this, the last time you had Notre Dame beat a number 1 ranked team back in 1993. They beat Florida State at home. The next week they played Boston College, and guess what? They lost. They're not going to lose today. I like the Fighting Irish, number 2 team in the country, the Fighting Irish big in this one. Then in the Pac-12 on Fox, middle of the afternoon day, a noon game, I guess, if you live out in California. It'll have USC and Arizona. It'll be in Arizona Stadium, actually. But I think USC will keep rolling. They had that big comeback win last week against Arizona State. I think they'll keep it rolling with a big win against Mike Tomlin. Or, my bad, it is not Mike Tomlin. But an Arizona State squad. Okay, then you have Florida, Arkansas. Florida got the big win. It looks like they're going to wrap up the SEC East, and they will. There's really not much to say there. St. Pittman's not going to be there because of COVID. Barry Odom might scheme up some stuff on defense, but Kyle Trask will keep it rolling. Hey, maybe some people in Florida are going to start talking about him getting that Heisman. We're going to have a segment next week about the Heisman, so you'll want to watch that. Then you'll have Oregon, Washington State, a big game for Oregon. People think if they can go undefeated, maybe they can get a spot in the playoff. I don't know. We'll just have to, we'll let them go undefeated first, and then we'll have that conversation. I like Oregon big in Martin Stadium. Then the big game tonight, you have Michigan and Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to just turn up the heat on that Jim Harbaugh talk. I like Wisconsin big in the big house. Then our final game of the day, you have Ole Miss and South Carolina from Vaught Hemingway Stadium, SEC Saturday Night Football. I think it's going to be strength on strength, that South Carolina defense versus that high-flying, lane train Ole Miss offense. But all aboard the lane train, I think Ole Miss is going to score too many points for South Carolina to be able to keep up. So it looks like that's going to do it here on the Patrick Party Pregame Show's picks for the college football weekend. But guess what else is today? We have the Masters. So let's go ahead and get on in to our Masters show. Well, in a year like none other, what happens to a tradition unlike any other? It changes. The Masters sending out its first ever autumn invitation. As all the great players of the world come down to Augusta National Golf Club to play in the tournament of the year, the 84th edition of the Masters this November. No azalea has ever bloomed on Amen Corner in November, and no ceremonial drive has ever rid the autumn breeze. But the Masters is perennial. The Masters plays on, and the Masters is going to have a wonderful tournament. It is Saturday, my friends, at the Masters. It's going to be a little bit different today. Just because of the rain delays. We're actually still, it's on ESPN right now. I'm watching it right over there. We're going to have a whole leaderboard update. We're going to talk all about this. But we have not finished round 2 yet. That's right. We had the rain delays. My gosh, if you watched any of not the rain, but like you were watching and you saw like pictures of it. I mean, it looked like there was a hurricane. It was really wet. The course is trying to dry up. The greens are softer, so it's been a little bit of scoring condition. Of course, Augusta is at its hardest when those greens are fast and dry. But we'll see. Round 2 just about finishing up, and then later today, or really right after round 2 ends, they're going to tee off round 3. They're going to make the cut, and it'll be Saturday at the Masters. There's just so much to talk about here in this 84th edition of a tradition unlike any other. Well, let's go ahead and get this thing started off with a leaderboard update, where we stand after just about the end of round 2. So let's go ahead and give you our Patrick Party leaderboard update. Let me go ahead and pull up the website. Okay, here we go. So we have a whole bunch of people tied for first in that 9 under position, and they're all final so far. Well, let's see. First up, you have Abraham Answer from Mexico. Then you have Cameron Smith from Australia. Adam Scott's also up here somewhere. Justin Thomas and Dustin Johnson and John Rahm all up in that 9 under position, tied for first after their 2 rounds. But really think about this. Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson, John Rahm. Those have been the players that have been the strongest all year. If you think about it, those have been the stars. Those have been the people that, honestly, you feel like if you had to start handpicking people, like, I want you to be really good today. Like, those are the people. You got the stars at the top, but let's keep it going. Now, all of the people at 8 under, and we got a lot. Well, you got Patrick Cantlay. You have Matsuyama, our PGA championship winner when it was out at Harding Park. You have Patrick Reed, former Masters champion. You have Sanjay M. You just have a whole bunch of people in that 8 under. Then at our 7 under, Rose, Fleetwood. Ooh, Danny Willett. Does everybody remember him from England? He won the Masters the year after Jordan won it. Justin Rose is up there at 7 under, tied for 11th. Then Koepka is back at 5 under with Mickelson. Oh, and I've seen it all on Twitter. It says, can the golf gods please give us a Phil Mickelson run Saturday and Sunday, the year after Tiger had his miracle run? Wouldn't that be so iconic? And then Tiger Woods at 5 under. He finished round 1 at 4 under. He's really only picked up 1 shot today. And let's see where he is. Oh, my bad. He's already finished. Yeah, all these people have already finished. So we are done with round 2, it looks like. And then let's go and talk about our projected cut line, which is that even. So if you went even, it's looking like you're going to make the cut because they're trying to do top 50 here. And yes, that would probably get them about the 50 they want. So it's looking like even is going to be our cut line. So DeChambeau, gosh, everyone talked about DeChambeau going into this. Can he break Augusta? Is he going to hit it 500 yards over every tree? I mean, it was a lot of hype for someone that's never really contended in the Masters. I just thought it was a lot. But he is going to make the cut. There was thought that he wouldn't. He actually had to have a pretty good day today. And let me tell you, his scorecard was like circles and squares all over the thing. I don't think he had 1 par. I mean, he might have had 1 or 2. I mean, he made a whole bunch of birdies. He made a whole bunch of bogeys. It was the crazy train with DeChambeau today. His driver was going everywhere, straight left, right, and trees. So we'll see if he can finish it out. Spieth is going to make the cut. Former Masters champion Tony Finau is going to make the cut right at even. We do have an amateur making the cut this year. Andy Ogletree will make the cut. He's actually at 2 under, so he's actually doing a pretty good day. But like I said, our people at the top, your 9 under, 8 under, 7 unders, even maybe your 6 and 5s, are the people that really are going to have a shot to make a run today. As we close out round 2 and begin round 3 Saturday at the Masters. Let's go ahead and talk about the course conditions for a second. It is an autumn in Augusta, and it has been a little bit different. Of course, the azaleas, all the pretty, we've had the changing of the trees, so there's been different pretty things. But one of the things I've noticed per se, the balls have been plugging on the green. They still have a little bit today. That due to the rain we had on Thursday, and it's still just kind of been moist. There's been a lot of play in the mornings, but once those greens start to really dry up, that is where this is going to get really interesting. This course will get a lot harder, and we'll see how these people are going to round it out. It's definitely been some more nice scoring conditions the first couple of days, but it could really dry up, and I think Sunday it could be really tough. Let me go ahead and remind you, the reason all this stuff has been so early, we're not watching the Masters at 5:30 at night, is because of the time change. Normally we're playing in April. We've already had the time change. We got plenty of daylight. Well, right now we're kind of transitioning into winter, so that is why our time that's why it hasn't been. They've just had to start really early for these Masters to really get it all in due to daylight. So it's definitely been a different Masters at Augusta National, but it's still been a great Masters because the Masters plays on. So we're going to go ahead and get into our player kind of preview, if that's what you want to call it. We're going to go through a couple of the star players today, who needs to make a run, that kind of thing here, as we continue on our Masters coverage here on the Patrick Purdy pregame show, our special Masters coverage. So let's go ahead and just kind of start it at the top. Let's go ahead and start with Justin Thomas. Let's look at his round 2 scorecard. Let's see. So he starts off the day of round 2. I guess it would actually have been yesterday. He starts it off with a double bogey on number 1. Then he gets a birdie on 2, has a birdie on 8, birdie on 9, bogey on 10, bogey on 13, and then he goes on a hot streak. He goes birdie 15, birdie 16, birdie 17, birdie 18, and that's really what helped him get into this percentage. He's had 14 birdies, 18 pars, 3 bogeys, and 1 double bogey. Let's see. He's hit 81% of the greens, 89% of the greens, 16 out of 18 greens in round 1, 13 out of 18 greens in round 2. The field has been about 67% total for greens in regulation. And then let's see how this driver's been doing. Okay, well, he's only hit 61% of the fairways, 17 out of the 28 holes he's played. That's not right. Because par 3s. And then the field is about 70%. So we'll see if he can keep that going. Let's look at Dustin Johnson now. Let's talk about this. So the game has really transitioned to just the people that just want to bomb it. The bombers. Just if you can hit some crazy 400-yard drive. I mean, just all the things. Well, Dustin Johnson has taken the other. He said, I can hit it plenty far. I don't need to hit it 100 more yards. I need to work on my short game. And that has really helped him. He's kind of reclaimed that number 1 in the world spot. And let's look at Dustin Johnson. He's had 1 eagle, 9 birdies, 24 pars, 2 bogeys, 0 double bogeys. And then let's look at his scorecard, specifically for round 2. He has pars all the way through 8. He has a birdie on 9, a birdie on 11, a birdie on 12, a birdie on 13, a little bad streak on 14 and 15, had bogeys on both of those, finished out the rest of the round with pars to get 70 out of the total 72. So he was 2 under for the day. Now let's look at Jon Rahm. We'll start off with Jon Rahm's scoring. He's had 1 eagle, 10 birdies, 22 pars, and 3 bogeys. Let's see, he's hit 69% of his greens in regulation. The field's been about 67. And then fairways hit, he's hit 82% of his fairways, 23 out of the 28 fairways. Remember, par 3s, that doesn't count for those. But he's at 82% to the field, 70%. So Rahm has definitely, that driver has been helping Rahm out. Let's look at Patrick Cantlay, who's at 8 under, tied for 6, in that kind of second slot of names. His round 2 scorecard starts the day off on number 1 with the par, goes birdies on 2 and 3, pars all the way through 8. 8, he gets a birdie. 10, he gets his first bogey and only bogey of the day. 11, 13, 15, and 16, he gets birdies and pars on the rest. He shoots 66 in round 2 to get into that tied for 6 and 8 under position going into Saturday at the Masters. He's had 10 birdies, no eagles, 24 pars, and only 2 bogeys. So he's been pretty efficient. Let's look at that driver. He's hit 82%, 23 out of the 28 fairways. So he's had a pretty, well, I mean, of course, if you're in second place at the Masters, you're having a pretty good day. Now let's look at, let's see, is there anyone else we really want to look at? Let's go ahead and look at, I really want to look at Tiger Woods. Oh, no, let's look at Phil Mickelson first. So Phil Mickelson is, where is he? Phil is currently, let's see, 5 under, tied for 17th. He's 4 shots, I guess, out of the lead. Let's look at that round 2 scorecard. So he goes bogey, birdie, bogey on 1, 2, 3. Pars number 4, gets birdies on 5 and 6. Then we have pars through the rest of that 9. Then we start on 10 with the birdie. 11, 12, all through amen corner, we have pars. 15, 16, we have a birdie and then a bogey. Then we finish it out with 2 pars for a 70 and 2 under. Let's look at him overall, his scoring. He's had 11 birdies, 19 pars, and 6 bogeys so far through this 84th edition of the Masters. He's hit 69% of his greens in regulation to the field 67, and his fairways hit is 75%. Well, that, when Phil can get the driver going, that tends to really be a good sign. Now, to the field 70. Now, in round 1, he hit 11 out of 14 fairways. Round 2, he missed 1 less, so 10 out of 14. And Phil, like you said, he hits it far. 302 yards is the average for Phil. 295, so he's been hitting it pretty far. He's not like the Bombers, but he definitely has a shot. And like I said, if we could get a lovely, Phil run on Sunday, wouldn't that be something special? Here on the 84th edition of the Masters. And then we're going to look at Tiger Woods, the last player we're going to look at for today here on our player breakdown. So let's go ahead. Let's talk about round 1 for Tiger first, because this was a big thing for me that I noticed. He went 4 under, shot a 68, no bogeys. No bogeys. That's big when you can play bogey-free at Augusta National. He had birdies on 1, 13, 15, and 16. Let's look at his things overall. He only has 2 bogeys, 27 pars, and 7 birdies. And then let's look at he's hit 79% of his fairways, 71% in round 1, 86% in round 2, hit 12 out of the 14 fairways in round 2. Let's look at that scorecard for round 2. Let's see. He had a lot of back-to-backs. So he had on 2, everything was pars except for what I'm about to tell you. On 2, he has a birdie. Then on 3, he has a bogey. On 7, he has a bogey. On 8, he has a birdie. And then on 15, he gets the lone birdie, goes from 4 under to 5 under, keeps it going as he looks to defend his Masters title run. I think our players that could really take a step, Thomas really finished hot. We'll see what Dustin Johnson can do, and Rahm as well, Patrick Cantley. Paul Casey, he has just stayed around at that 7 under, kind of gone down some. A lot of people didn't think he could stay. He tends to get himself in a big position but not really hold it through, and that's kind of what happened again today. So that looks like that is going to just about do it here for our pregame show. Well, if you go back and look on our Instagram and Facebook pages, we made our pick. I picked Dustin Johnson to win this Masters. He's in that top somewhat of a spot right now, and it's looking pretty strong for him. So, hey, maybe I'll have made the right pick. We're going to be breaking down the Masters all throughout today and tomorrow as we cover this 84th edition of a tradition unlike any other. So it looks like that's going to do it for us. We've already made our college football picks. So enjoy your sports weekend. Enjoy the Masters and all of the college football games that you want to watch. Some of them aren't that great due to our COVID craziness. But we want to thank you for tuning in to the Patrick Party pregame show today, and enjoy Saturday at the Masters.